Alright, so The Boys Season 5 Episode 6 dropped a couple days ago at this point, and I'm pretty conflicted. I don't want to sound like I'm just hating on the show because I still find myself enjoying it. Every week I'm there watching it, and I do enjoy it from end to end, except for when things are overly done, which sometimes there are some silly moments. I'm just able to acknowledge some of the inconsistencies in the show that bother me. The trailer for this episode, for example, had me thinking it was going to be action-packed. Alright, I generally don't need too many fighting scenes or big moments. I actually really enjoy moments of characters talking, devising plans. That's what made Game of Thrones in the earlier seasons so great. And there were moments in this show, especially in like the first two seasons, that featured that was really good. But, this is the third to last episode, and the trailer had me thinking we were gonna get some crazy fights. So when I watched the episode, I found that it was a little anticlimactic, but that's kind of just my fault. I think Homelander was pretty solid this episode, though. For the first time in a while, he displayed some actual intelligence when he tracked the VOT emergency alert necklace and found the team. In a weird way, I like that Homelander also spared the legend, Chet, whatever his fucking fake name was, but it perpetuates this system he's developed where he doesn't kill someone unless they're afraid of him. It's a weird system because he actually enjoys when people fear him because it obviously makes him feel superior. This power dynamic that he exploits all the time, but at the same time he wants to be loved by the masses, so much so that he's proclaimed himself to be God and thinks that he's actually helping people. It's almost like a twisted pleasure that he indulges in when he feels like it. At the same time, Homelander has also taken it upon himself to fall into the role of Soldier Boy's son, where he accepts a scolding and even a punch to the face from him after this misunderstanding that was cultivated by Sage. Aside from that, Huey and Annie had a nice scene together. They finally sort of resembled their earlier relationship. In season 4 and most of this season, I found that their interactions were a bit odd and unbecoming of the two of them, especially under these circumstances. It feels like these two haven't been together for years. It's like these two fucking got together a month ago, I don't know. But having a scene where they take a step back and just talk was really nice to see. And of course, as always, Huey's optimism is really, really enjoyable. Him being that shining star of the team has always been a great trope, and I really like that even through it all, he still remained optimistic that they will save Annie and Kimiko. Also, Chet, a legend, earlier on in this episode, after the team talks about kidnapping Bombsight's girlfriend, he just tells MM that he's basically become another version of Butcher, and MM is pretty upset with that. He clearly seems to have internalized that because we see him display this conflicted expression. I think that this scene, along with Frenchie and Kimiko's acceptance of Kimiko's fate, is setting up for a decent spin on their ending that's gonna come in the next episode. I think the next episode is titled The Frenchman, the Woman, and the Man Called Mother's Milk. Of course, there's a reference to their demise in the fucking comics, but I think it's going to be a little different than what we got. With all that being said, there were an incredible amount of stupid moments in this episode that actually made me pause the show for a second. First and foremost, what the fuck is going on with Soldier Boy? He's continuously flopped back and forth between hating and supporting Homelander, and it's actually tiresome at this point because there's so little time left. In the first place, the last 3 episodes have, without fail, featured some VOT Rising build-up, and it's blown so far to proportion that it's now begun to dig away at the best character this season.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Soldier Boy has consistently dominated whatever scene he's in, and this is props to Jensen Ackles. I'm a really big fan of him, but I think they've kind of trapped the character in a box at this point. This season began with him being unfrozen and trepidatious, but nonetheless he falls through and gets hit with the virus. But after surviving the virus, he fucking hates Homelander, alright? He tries to steal the spotlight, sleeps with Firecracker, traps Homelander in a uranium room while fucking going for the V1 to destroy it. Of course, in the same episode where he trapped Homelander in the room, he also snapped and killed Quinn, which may have resulted in him having a moment of introspection, which led to him warming up to his and Homelander's relationship. Then, after he saves Homelander in episode 5, you're like, oh, okay, he's on Homelander's side for sure now. That should surely be it. right? We're not gonna fucking flip-flop back and forth anymore. But then episode 6 comes and they're once again at odds, this time because of Stormfront. Now I understand that Stormfront is gonna be an important character in Vault Rising. This is an annoying level of retconning in service for a spin-off. When he was introduced, Soldier Boy was said to have only loved and genuinely cared for Crimson Countess, which we even saw when he eventually confronted her. He only mentioned Stormfront, aka Liberty, once, and that was at Herogasm, where his recollection of the relationship didn't seem very fucking romantic. He was just talking about getting freaky. But now this season, she was apparently his only reason for living, and I'm not buying it. The nail in the coffin this episode was the ending. I'd already assumed that Homelander and Soldier Boy would get the V1, but after their fight in the beginning, I was anticipating some sort of confrontation, or maybe even like a small fight. But no. After receiving the V1 from Bomb Site, Soldier Boy immediately gives it to Homelander, like genuinely seconds later, because literally as he's handing it to him, Homelander's descending. So he didn't have that much time to think it over. He basically just says that it's what Stormfront would have wanted, and that his love for her outweighs his hatred for Homelander. This is pretty much the modern superhero equivalent of Save Martha. I was fine with Vault Rising, but this level of focus on a post-finale prequel spin-off is pretty absurd, and an incredible disservice to the show in its final season. Listen, I thought that Soldier Boy's character arc this season was gonna show him embracing a fatherly role, trying to be better while addressing his own emotional issues. But instead, he's been pretty inconsistent, and I understand the idea of him completing the mission regardless of any emotion, him being a strong, tough guy, soldier. We saw that in season 3, but this season he's only been led by his own feelings, which seem to have no sensible direction. I understand that Ashley read his mind, and he's proud of Homelander, just doesn't really care or know how to show it because of, what generation he was born in. That doesn't really warrant the back and forth that we're getting. There were a lot of other things too. For example, the Deep killed Black Noir, and I actually had to pause the show because this is pretty stupid. He killed him with a cable cord and a knife. Now, I don't know if they actually remember this, but the new Noir can fly. We saw that in the last season, and he tanked a fucking machine gun. So how am I gonna be okay with the Deep, who is notoriously a bum and a fraud, choking him with a cable cord and fucking stabbing him with a knife, and that being better than a machine gun, and so debilitating that he couldn't fly away or fly the Deep into a wall to break the chokehold? Listen, I understand that Noir clearly isn't extremely skilled, especially not in the way that the original Noir was, but there should be absolutely no world in which the Deep easily kills him like that. Getting choked and stabbed by a regular knife after tanking a fucking machine gun and showing that you can fly, it's really stupid. More importantly, his death also made that entire character arc pointless, and considering that these two's relationship got increasingly worse with each episode, it's a shame that it didn't even culminate in an actual fight or, a well thought out death. At this point, I really hope the Deep doesn't make it to the finale. I want him to die in the next episode, just so that he can face his consequences. Also, because I don't want him to take too much screen time up in the final episode. I think that one final episode could genuinely just be the whole fight between Butcher and Homelander, and I'd enjoy it. But also, the Deep has just never faced any real consequences, and for multiple seasons now, he's gotten away with committing random atrocities while being extremely stagnant. I understand that he's a big meme in the fandom, and even now into the show, but at some point you have to put that to rest, especially when it's taken screen time away from other stories. I really don't understand the power scaling in the show either, because later on in this episode we get another really dumb scene. Starlight has a confrontation with Father, who's actually just, I guess, too strong, he just beats her ass and she gets saved by Huey. There are two reasons why that's dumb, and I'm glad to elaborate. First and foremost, there's absolutely no reason why Huey should be saving Starlight. In the first place, you really do need to make her competent. But then to go back on that whole conflict they had in season 3, and even parts of season 4 about Annie being able to protect herself, especially in the final season against a character you introduced this season, is pretty ridiculous. But also, we're in the final season. Starlight has shown absolutely no reason for any of us to believe that she can be a significant character in the final battle, or just any battle at all. At some point, you have to give her a win, especially with the power buff that was given to her at the end of the final season. Her being able to fly is pretty incredible, but along with that, she could have gotten some sort of power enhancement, especially enough to make it so that she beats a fucking random side character. Starlight is literally one of your main three good superheroes, right? And what the fuck? She hasn't done shit in the next two episodes. If she were to have a fight with Soldier Boy or Homelander, even if she's a part of a team, her landing any damage on them wouldn't even make any sense, alright? Because at this point, you haven't done anything to build up her power and make it seem formidable in any way. Her blinding Homelander does not mean anything to me in the first episode. She caught him off guard. The guy has V1 now. This guy might be able to fucking, like, see in the back of his head for all I know. I don't know. But finally, I hate everything about Sage. The show wrote themselves into a major hole with her character. Having a character who's the smartest person in the world creates this extremely high expectation of their ability to predict things and act with respect to their own interests. And although she's clearly confident in prediction skills, she's drawn up multiple blanks. In the first place, she didn't know that Soldier Boy and Homelander had a lead until Ashley read Soldier Boy's mind, which then told her to fucking switch sides. Even then, she miscalculated Soldier Boy giving the V1 to Homelander, but between that and how stupid her plan is, I genuinely struggle to believe that she's top 2 in the verse. Now, I genuinely hope that maybe it's a fake out and she's like a triple agent or something, because that would at least make it a little better, but I don't know. I don't got too much hope in that. Those are pretty much my main issues with the show ahead of the final season. I still have hope for the finale, call me delusional, but I'm really excited for the next 2 episodes, and I'm scared, alright? I personally think that the next episode will, of course, feature the deaths of Frenchie, and Kimiko, and if you're familiar with the comics, you know how they die, but honestly, I think there's gonna be a spin on this. I think that in the next episode, they'll sacrifice themselves in a way that reverses the betrayal. At this point, everybody's expecting Butcher to betray them, but I think that they're going to subvert your expectations and instead let those 3 go out on their own terms. What leads me to believe this is the fact that Kimiko no longer fears death and instead sees it as a necessity for peace. And Frenchie wouldn't have very much to live for outside of this great conflict, and of course Kimiko and the team. As for I feel like being compared to Butcher gave him this wake-up call. He had a second to step outside of himself and really evaluate his recent actions, and I believe that for the sake of his daughter, he will end up making a better decision, sacrificing himself in the process and embracing that family man role, because this season when he's like, yeah, they weighed me down, like I'm free without them. Of course, this is not true. We knew how much loved his family before, and I think he'll have a moment of realization before he dies. At least I fucking hope so.
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory.
I got a little bit of hope for the finale. As always, I'm excited for the next 2 episodes. Like, I'm still counting down the days till the next one, but let me know what you guys think, and yeah, that's pretty much it.